all is not what it appears to be. You hear these common speaking points, and I've heard them from people that are in the op side. They may not know it, but they do repeat these speaking points because some insider told them. And one of the things that they said is they needed to get people's attention on this topic. They needed to get people's attention. They're on the road to getting more attention than they got previously. And what's going to do that more than videos and now a news station? And that's one of the things that I heard over and over and over was that in order for this to gain any traction, we needed to get people's attention. So that was part of it's not just the up, but that's part of this whole thing.
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks. We are continuing our quest to understand, to parse, to unpeel what on earth or off or both may be going on with this air quotes mystery drone / orb / other phenomena situation. It is unrelenting. It's sustained. It is not going anywhere. I brought somebody on who you've likely met before here on this show and elsewhere. Her name is Susan Manewich. She's not only a dear friend, but a brilliant colleague. I'm proud to know her. And Susan and I decided a little while ago, about a week or so ago, that we had to try to tackle this from a perspective that I think only Susan can come from. And I'm really anxious to get her thoughts on what we may be witnessing, what we may be witnessing in the future, and how it all ties in with the larger phenomenon that we call UFO and UAP and beyond. So without further ado, Susan Manewich, welcome back to the show.
It's nice to be with you post-Christmas.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, it's exciting times. I love doing Christmas and and focusing on the joys of Christmas. But my God, has there been just a little bit of a I won't call it an interruption, but sort of a parallel track. Many of us in the field and beyond have been traveling during this holiday season, and that is trying to understand what may be happening with this unrelenting story that persists. So I think we should begin at the beginning, Susan, when it comes to your purview. And I know you want to bring in some of your own very personal insights and experiences as to the dot connecting exercise that we're going to do a little bit today. So why don't you go ahead and start out with maybe a summary of what, not necessarily what you feel is going on, because we're going to get to that, but what are you hearing right now from others? What have you taken account of from others thus far? And for the date stamp, it is December 27th, 2 days after Christmas. What have you heard thus far?
Well, what I've heard thus far is I do know people in New Jersey, so some of them did see that activity. And the people that I did speak to, that I'm connected to, did not get the sense that it was something that, again, from what they saw, did not get the sense that it was something that was of extraterrestrial origin. Okay, so, but that's each person is different. So there's that piece. I did watch actually your interview with Steve
Mara.
Morrow. Yes, yes. I thought it was great. I thought that was fabulous. And I know that Steve Bassett came in on the end of that. So I did catch that because I thought that was important. I have paid attention to, there was a roundtable discussion as part of Jim Garrison leads that with Ubiquity University, Humanity Rising. So wasn't able to watch the whole thing, but I did watch that as well. So it was interesting, and that was the external watching. But most of, I would say, the people that I know that are connected to this phenomenon, and this is where I will parse it out a bit. There's people that have had what I would call physical encounters. They've had these shared physical encounters, and specifically know that, like, let's say that they were touched by whether it be an ET or an interdimensional being, like that they felt like there was that real shared space on that physical level. And I will make those differentiations. And some of those folks were not getting the sense that this was something that was of extraterrestrial origin. And that was some of the early conversations right off the bat. I know when I say, I mean, I'm talking like, 30 people that I've spoken to that have these type of connections. And then there was others that were saying, "Oh, I know what this is. The time is here, and that these are the beings, and they're making an appearance." And so I actually didn't chime in too much on any of that because I had my initial reactions as well, and I truthfully was feeling. I'm a big solstice person, especially winter solstice, and I really feel these cosmic solar alignments tremendously. And the pull for me wasn't to scour everything and look at everything. It was a strong connection with the earth and a strong connection with the cosmos. And in keeping in alignment with that for myself, that really came in super strong. And normally I would have written an article on this. I would have, posted something with the drone situation. I didn't do that. I really just paid attention to what I was, getting and feeling in the sense that I was is cultivate that connection with the sun and the earth and the magnificent alignment that we have. And it was nothing short. Like I shared with you before we started recording, you asked me how my holiday was. I said it was extremely magical, and it was really wonderful. So that's what I've gotten so far. There's myself, and I can go into that a little bit further, but with others, I would say it's a bit split. Those who've had more of a physical contact, a physical connection with different beings, I would say we're not feeling like this was something other than, I hate to use the word op, but
Mhm.
we're feeling like this was really the start of an op. And I do have a tendency to lean in that direction, which I'd love to be able to get into a
And
little
I
bit
wanna get into
more.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean that, I mean, listen, let me just come out and say this. For those of us who can see and have been able to see because of our connection or because of our openness, whatever it is, we see things all the time. And I just want to come out and say that, that's not something that I would say is unusual for us to see various different things.
Mhm.
I do know that when things heat up, there does seem to be a tendency of activity in general. I mean, I've had personal situations in my life. There was one that my life was in danger at one point when I was. Oh, uh, trying to figure out how many years ago, and I would like to keep it a little bit, like confidential. But my life was in danger for a very short instance of time, like in an evening, and I saw something in the sky that was different than the I would say my guys, I would say, the ship and the beings that I've seen and been connected to. And I thought to myself, whoa, okay, what's that? That's different. So I will also say that, there does seem to be a greater sense of activity that I've experienced when, there's some type of a big event or some type of an event that's occurring that does seem to be either scary to people or
Mm.
there's some type of a concern for what's going on, maybe even electromagnetically. So that's highly possible as well.
Do you feel that those officials, I'm hesitating because we say government, we use the terms relatively loosely, intelligence officials, the agencies, the alphabet agencies know full well what's going on. Well, I mean, if you think that it's the O word, I suppose they would have to know, but are they just 100% lying to us
I
by
believe
saying
so.
they don't know?
Yeah, I believe so. And here's why. And I'm going to be really bold today to say a couple of things. The first one is, I've been with you before, and I've been on your show before. I've had two streams in my life. The first one is, I remember my incarnation. I remember where I came from. I had a connection with the beings before I incarnated, and I have a connection with the beings as I'm here in this body this time around on the planet. So there's that piece. But then the other part is I was kidnapped when I was 7, taken out of school, but what we now know is technically Men in Black, and when I was 7 years old. So I've had a vested interest to find out who did that and bring these perpetrators to justice. Now, this is not your standard kidnapping, right? I mean, like, as a kid, I experienced what we now know, there's a term for it now, Havana syndrome, right? Like, that's a newer term in this last, 5 to 10 years or so. But I experienced that, and that would be the late 70s, right? So, I have a vested interest, and I've had my eye on the ball with that piece, what I call this massive interference. And I live my life, I would say, like a pretty normal person, because I think that's part of my evolutionary path is to not overdo in one area or over underdo in another. I mean, to really live my life in this, I call it an evolutionary way. And at the same time, to understand who did this, why are they doing this? I wrote that article on my Substack account. It's called "What's So Dangerous About the Light?" And that piece is really important. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about with this, but one of the things that I will say is I was doing some research about a year or two ago. I think I don't know, I think it was last year. I can't remember. I just know it was a really, really cold series of days. So, you're inside, live in New England, it's really cold. You stay inside by the fire and you crack open your computer and you just get into it. And one of the things that I did find is in 1959, there's these different satellites that were launched. And 1959, 1961, and the different satellites, Samos, Corona, Gambit. And so there's different iterations of these different satellites. But the technology that they had back then to look at what was going on Earth was almost instantaneous, to be able to send those photographs back to Earth. And where I do believe that I was taken when I was kidnapped as a kid was to a local Air Force base nearby. Well, that happened to be the photographic processing facility of what was coming in from those satellites. Okay. So, it's not just, it's not just that the military has been looking at potential foreign threats here on land, but somehow, somewhere along the way, foreign threat equated to people that were having contact with, I would say, their natural sense of their cosmic self, right? Like their natural sense of self. So somewhere along the way, that became a threat. And I think that's one of the things that really gets missed here is we think it's a ship in the sky, or we think it's this foreign ET. But one of the things that we failed, I would say, miserably in this community, with the exception of you, I don't know many others, and I'm being super honest, that has made the connection between a person who has this innate contact and just a foreign ship, right? Like, or just a ship in the sky, some mystery ship in the sky, because at some point that shifted, right? Like at some point, somewhere along the way, these satellites and the people that were processing these images were able to figure out, hey, you know what? There's human beings that are connected to these things for
Mhm.
whatever reason. Maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know. And that is the one thing when we talk about disclosure. I know we're on the drone story here, but when we talk about disclosure, the fact that this gets missed like massively, maybe
Blatantly, yeah.
yeah, and maybe it's this, sometimes and maybe it's this kind of out of balance focus on the materialism, but there's
Mhm.
this lack of looking at the human psychology, the ops, the MK Ultra, the conditioning aspect, like the psychological operation that has been pulled on humanity. And the other part of that, this huge effort to cleanse and rewrite history on behalf of these government forces relating to this innate contact. I mean, it's similar to an ethnic cleansing. It's
Mhm,
similar to some of the things that they did with the indigenous people, right? I mean, these innate natural connections that the indigenous people have to the lands here. I'll specifically talk about North America and to Canada, right? And so, this sense of getting in front of a human being and their innate natural connection
mhm.
um, is something that gets missed in this arena. So, you know, I say to myself, I say, geez, I wasn't getting the sense, from a personal standpoint, that what was happening in New Jersey had anything personally to do with me. Like I wasn't like, oh, the beings are here. Um, and I can go into what that is about, but that doesn't mean that there weren't people that were connected to some of these various beings, perhaps, or some of potentially what was there that maybe had concern, right?
Mhm.
Because I do speculate that one of the reasons I was taken as a kid by the military was to see if they could stimulate the connection that I had, that they were watching in some way.
Right.
That somehow, it's almost like your gang comes along because they're trying to protect you because they don't want you to get hurt, right? So my sense is that they were trying to see, if they could stimulate that piece. So it's multifold. So there's a lot of games that have been played. I mean, I'll probably stop right there because there's so much I can say,
I
and there's
know.
a lot of detail on this. But the talking points as well, one more part to that. The talking points on behalf of, immediately you've got people that are in this, and I'm going to do the air quotes, the disclosure process. And my sense is those are intel people, and I've got some facts to go along with that. That they're there to help usher along this narrative, and sure enough, they're right on the mainstream news talking about it, very shortly thereafter,
Right.
as if they are the experts.
Right. So I have to ask, is this part and parcel what we're seeing right now, part of that disclosure? We'll call it. Let's just go there. We're going to call it disclosure up. I'm going to call an entity out right now, and I'm just going to have to take my chances since we're going to be bold today. Let's do it. Look, I have been many people know that I came from mainstream news. That's where I was trained, or mainstream media, I should say. So I know the framework fairly well. And I know patterns fairly well. And one of the patterns that I have seen emerge in the last year or so is an entity that is now called News Nation.
Yes.
It is quite interesting to watch. It's actually they've actually done a fairly good job in drawing me in. I think the subjects that they cover are quite fascinating, but curious nonetheless, because it seems as if they have been the anointed and appointed ones to cover this end to end, almost as if to look at the what's the factor the term I want to use, to see what the temperature, to check the temperature of the public, to see how big of a deal this might be before they deploy it to their partners in other mainstream outlets. I've got to say this now. Yesterday, and again, I say this kind of uh, I'm criticizing, and I'm being a little bit investigative with this, but I'm also complimenting in a way because they've got some good coverage. You've got the likes of Ross Coulter, uh, Chris Cuomo's been covering it end to end, Banfield, all of them. They have dedicated, I want to say, the last week to making this drone mystery front and center headline news. And I believe it was Ross Coulter, who's out of Australia, who did a full 1 hour special, Susan, on this situation, which sort of culminated into the broader UAP subject with the likes of Luis Elizondo, et cetera. So
Course.
I'm going the long about way of saying, kind of supporting your point of, if this is an op, I could see where there is a methodical side to this, where they're taking this relatively new mainstream outlet and making them sort of the dumping, not the dumping ground, but the deployer of the information to see
Yeah.
how catchy it will be with the rest of the public before they deploy it there. Your thoughts on that?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I think I wrote that. right when News Nation came out, because you could see the handoff. I mean, the handoff. First of all, mainstream media, the ratings, as you probably know, are down. Like the trust that people have in mainstream media is at the lowest it's ever been, right?
Mm,
And
mhm,
so, what they clearly did, because News Nation it's $1 billion plus. It's backed by $1 billion plus organization. So you're not talking about something that is legit ground up. That is not accurate.
no.
And it looks to me that they just they just changed the face to make it appear that this is something that's cutting edge. And right off the bat, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Grush story that they put front and center, and
Absolutely.
you had Leslie Keane on there, so again, you have these same players. And I'm not anti those people. Because I was actually interviewed by Ralph Blumenthal in my home for 3 days around 2007, 2008. So, I'm not anti, but you can see these angles, like you said, and you see this patterning.
Mm,
But, Chris Cuomo was also a very large advocate for, the V word during the COVID era. So,
mhm,
like y- y- when the market share begins to shift, there's a shift of that people seem to have with it. And I've seen some of the things that News Nation has done, but they do seem to be the fertile soil to plant all of these seeds, and they're moving quickly and fast, and before you know it, all of a sudden this is now established as the place to go for,
mhm.
I kind of make a joke, the place to go for the next op. Um, but they're, and great ops, by the way, as I'm starting to really see over these, how many years looking at all of these things, the really good ones, they combine some truth, right? Um,
Always have to.
in truthful movements,
Mhm.
because now they're addressing things that they would never have addressed on CNN.
Yeah.
I think News Nation is like CNN 2.0, by the way. But they've got this because they know that the gig is up with certain things. The gig is
Mhm,
up. The pharmaceutical companies are obviously being held liable, and there's this shift that they cannot deny that's happening with the public now, right? So it's like, okay, well, let's merge that into this other thing that's happening and going on. And it's people like you and I and others that address these things and know about this topic throughout the years. The public is very ill informed on this. News reporters are very ill informed on this.
mhm,
There's very
mhm,
little real journalism that's actually happening and going on in this arena. And those that maybe do have that edge towards that, their voices are not necessarily heard in this. So
mm.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I probably have a lot more not so nice things to say about it. So maybe we should
Yeah,
move
we're
on.
gonna hold it there for now, but we'll bring in another arm to the octopus. So, guys, so here's what we're doing. We're being a little, we're poking some holes, kicking the tires a little bit, as we should, as we all should, to make up for the radio silence that's going on with our officials. Maybe it's good that they're giving us silence so we can fill in the blanks for ourselves with our own intelligence. Here's another little thing I picked up in it. Look, it could be nothing. But I happened to find this, there's this app. Guys, have you ever heard of an app called Enigma? And I'm going to read this to you. It's an app that invites users to post videos of what they're seeing and provide the location of where they're seeing it. Simple enough, right? So the app has this app has hit nearly 1 million downloads in the last month. It's up about 74%, an increase in usage since obviously what's been going on. Now, here's the interesting thing, Susan and company. Um, Employees of that are now supporting this app, the employees come from major companies like Meta and American Express, and there's a trendy startup called Tia. I guess there are employees that went over there. They've raised money. The amount has not been disclosed for this company called Enigma from some of the biggest names in venture capital, including Kindred Ventures. Now, interestingly, there's a mystery along with the enigma, and that is the founder who remains anonymous. I believe it's a she, and she goes simply by the initial A. Now, she, A, has met with the team that compiled a report about UAPs for NASA, that was released last year. While the company doesn't, this is a quote, while the company doesn't have government contracts to date, A said that she does speak regularly, informally, however, with government folks. That's a quote. Okay, so I read that and I thought, okay, that's interesting. Not surprising that the downloads have surged because of what's been going on, but it was, what the infrastructure of Enigma that sort of piqued my interest in terms of if you wanted to follow the op route. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts on that, and then I'll give some facts of what I've personally experienced. There's legacy money that's here, and there's legacy money, there's legacy power, and there's legacy control. And there's also culture shaping that has happened and gone on with this legacy money and this legacy power. And those things are important, because as there is an awakening process, there is a rise of consciousness on the planet. As you know, I'm working on I'm working on that, like with the solar energies, because I do believe, we're at this epoch, we're at this time. And there's this sense of not wanting the people to get ahead, not wanting the people to get ahead with this rise of consciousness and this control mechanism that has gone on, that has continued to go on. So,
Mhm.
when you look at that, you can't help but say, geez, is this all in collaboration with one another? I mean, this is where human beings, I don't know about you, Alexis, but I do wanna see the good. I do
Mhm.
wanna see, it's like, "Oh god, well, if this is bad and if that's co-opted and this is," then where is the good, right? Like, see, it's exhausting to try to
Yeah.
continually, um, realize that all is not what it appears to be. And so I didn't know about that app. I'm not surprised, because one of the
Mhm.
things that I've heard, you hear these common speaking points, and I've heard them from people that are in, I would call it more the op side. They may not know it, but they do repeat these speaking points because some
Mhm.
insider told them. And one of the things that they said is they needed to get people's attention on this topic, because even when you and I spoke, I don't know, a year ago about the drone slash, I'm not sorry, the drone, the Chinese balloon slash
Mhm.
UFO. Remember that? I think you
Mhm.
saw it where you were.
It was
You
over
s
my house. That's correct. Before they
Yeah,
shot it down off the coast of South Carolina. Right. Yeah.
right. And one of the comments you made, you're like, "What's going on?" I don't think people other than you and I really care about this, Susan. It was kind of like, the public didn't really care,
Yeah.
right? Oh, well, geez. Now you've got the public caring, right? Well, why
At
is
least in New Jersey, not to cut you off, but I'm still
Yeah.
wondering what the temperature is in terms of this being a ubiquitous phenomenon. I still don't know. I've talked to people that they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then I've heard from a friend who's totally not in our space at all that texted me, "What is up with the New Jersey drones? You were right all along, Alexis." I mean, so I'm not really sure. Is
Yeah.
it that big of a deal? Have they
Well,
even gotten there yet?
I would say this. uh, um, they needed to get people's attention. They're on the road to getting more attention than they got previously. That's probably a more
Mhm.
accurate statement, right? And what's going to do that more than videos and now a news station, slash mainstream, maybe alternative appearing,
Mhm.
news station that's now focusing on this, right? And the fact that that the White House had to comment on it because it was being asked. So then the White House commented on it.
Mhm.
Correct? So
Mhm.
so I
Mhm.
would say it's getting more attention, but that's one of the things that I heard over and over and over, was that in order for this to gain any traction, we needed to get people's attention. So that was part of it's not just the up, but that's part of this whole thing, is trying to bring in the public to get them to actually care about this. Well, why does the public need to care about this? Why?
Right.
I don't I mean,
Why do these drones need to be seen? Because that's
right.
obvious too. They want to be seen, whatever they are, whatever the phenomena is, it wants to be seen. That is part of the bottom line.
I agree, I agree. Just one quickly, another talking point that it just it came in as I was one, I've heard it and I just kept playing over in my head, and then I saw something else. This whole I heard Chris Mellon go on, I think it was News Nation. He said, "We don't know what they are, right? Like we don't know what they are." And then James Fox, there's a clip on Joe Rogan. He goes, some high up military person told him, "We don't know what they are, or where they come from, and can you
Mm.
imagine? That's a threat if the defense can't, defend against this." That is a lie. That is a lie.
He
They
said that's
do.
a threat? He said that
No,
is a
no,
threat?
no, no, no. It was the implication as he was speaking from this military person that gave him that inside information that we don't know what they are, where they come from. And I've heard that as well. Elizondo talk about that oh, how can we help defend if we can't stop these abductions, or we can't stop these things from taking place, like with children, and what are we going to tell mothers, right? And I'm thinking to myself, you do know what they are, and the fact that in 2024 that's going to be used as a talking point to this day, it's like you guys either got to up the op or realize that that people are far ahead of what is happening and going on here. So these continued similar talking points
Right.
to say we don't know, so that if we don't know, then hey, public, you don't know, so anything that you're seeing up there could be a potential issue, could be a threat,
Mm.
we can't protect ourselves. Then as you know, that brings up legislation, more money for defense, more money for technology, perhaps less rights as American citizens and worldwide citizens that we have
Right.
to interact with whatever we want to interact with.
Right. I need to I wanna introduce another element into this, Susan. As we know, guys, the moving parts are infinite in this and many other things that we talk about here on the show. But I wanna bring in the element of these so the word drone has been used probably most often, but the other term that is being or what's being described as orb-like, objects in the sky, people are even calling them plasma balls, they've also been captured. So I wanna introduce something, uh, maybe playing a little bit of a devil's advocate, not necessarily devil's advocate, but adding to the enigma of what's going on here. Could it be, question, that the government may not know full well what's going on, but part of what's going on. But there's another element to this that is indeed a mystery to them as well as us. And that would bring in the sort of orb like phenomena. In other words, could there be two things going on concurrently? And the government, everything that you said would still hold, but there's another layer to this or dimension, if you will, that they wanna give the impression or trying to get a hold of so they can grab the narrative on that. Could both be true.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier. So I think this is where it's really important to create the differentiation, because first of all, like I said, I mean, I've had contact with the beings, with the ships, and there's this evolutionary process, and I don't go out and publicize all of it ever. Some of it here and there that feels relevant to do, but I've seen a variety of different things, and let me break that down just a little bit, because then I want to talk about because even there's a differentiation with orbs. Okay, um, in like I was saying, that time that my life was threatened, I was in Canada, and I saw this light go vertical, and it was you could call it a ship or an orb, and it just went vertical, and I thought, oh my god, I'm either being protected or I'm losing my mind right now, like what is going on? And that was interesting. There was another time, and that was around 2016, 2016. There was another time that I was in Burlington, Vermont, and there was a clear ship in the sky, and my husband and I were walking. He was my fiance at the time. We were walking along Lake Champlain. We see a ship. I mean, we clearly saw a ship in the sky, and it was going fast, and then it just hovered. The next thing we know, we saw two fighter jets go after it, and I
And
mean,
when
they
was this again? How long ago?
it was about 2018 or 2019.
Okay, not that long
Yeah.
ago.
And another time I was flying this was 2016 from Hawaii to Boston Logan Airport, a familiar place that you have as well. And I saw these orbs of light, and it wasn't a light; it was an orb. It was round, and it was just shooting up and then bouncing. And just, I mean, you could see that it had some form of intelligence to it. And I was just thinking, I thought to myself, I was like, well, that's not mine. I don't know what that is. Maybe
Mhm.
it's somebody else that's connected to this on the ground here, or maybe it's part of a technology, biotech. There's so many different tech companies out in Boston, and I thought, okay, that's not the norm. And I thought, well, maybe I didn't really see what I saw. So of course I see it again, and
Mm.
in a different way, bouncing to a different part, from the ground to the sky. And I thought, okay, again, it's interesting. It's just a data point. I didn't make too much of a connection to it. So, there's a variety of different things that are out there. There's things that I feel a very close personal connection to, that I would say, okay, this is my ship. This is mine, that I'm connected to, or this is my beings. Like, I can feel it. There's a resonance. There's an instantaneous connection to that, and it's very benevolent. It feels like a connection, honestly, to like a whale or a dolphin or an elephant. Just something magnanimous, but also very loving and very natural. And I just wanted to put that data point in there, because I think that's important to what else that people could be seeing. Um, in some of those pictures, there was clearly planets that do sparkle at night. And if you look at some of those actual photographs, those were planets that people were seeing. And that is a super, by the way, no criticism, a super common mistake that people can make, because if you don't look at the night sky that often,
Mm.
um, and you're like, but it was moving. Well, it is and it isn't, to what you're seeing, but it's identifiable. So I want to share that piece, but it's very possible, like I was saying, that people could be seeing some different forms of intelligent energy that are there. And with these planetary changes that are taking place, you've got this change in the magnetosphere around the planet.
Mm.
It was my speculation that's what would bring about us being able to see more of these things, see more of these. I don't even want to say anomalies. I think some of it is a very natural life force, and maybe part of this whole drone situation is absconding that, because I think
Mm.
I think that they would, I say that they, like the intel community, which is different than the military. The intel community, I think, would very much be planned and ready to go to do something if there was, forms of activity that were happening that they couldn't easily explain to the public. So sure, you could have part of that as well.
Wow. I'm going to leave it, well, I don't wanna leave it there. I wanna ask you another question, then this is supposed to be a short segment. It is very difficult to do a short segment talking about something like this, but we're gonna wind down and obviously have you back because there's gonna be a lot more to parse in this whole thing. Why now? This is where I'd like to have you conclude. Why now, and where is it leading?
Well,
Summary, please.
yeah, I mean, you do have, you have someone that's taking office right now. There has been a lot of drama around that one person. So,
To think.
yeah, just a little bit, for just a little bit. So, the why now, my
100%, well, I'm gonna stop you. 100% that? Or
no, 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 no. But I do think that there's disruption. I think that there's this disruption, and I do think that there is a big move financially. I was at a conference in Australia. It was a super high level conference, and I like to do these things on occasion to be able to, really understand. Sometimes you got to get out of the country to see what's going on around the world and to see what's going on in your own country. Because if you don't, then you're very limited in
Right.
I think what we understand, and most importantly, the connection points that are happening and going on. And there's a huge economy moving towards space right now. There's a
No question.
huge economy.
Well, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Right, right. And
Right.
with that, I'll call it, there's a transition of this economy to space. And I think you have
Hmm.
you have a lot of psychological warfare that's happening, but also, maybe part of, which I think is terrible the way that they're doing it, this like acclimatizing people to being able to see some of these exotic technologies too.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
from what I understand, the privatization of space, began to happen, like soon after the last time we went to the moon.
Mhm. Oh, I
And
agree with you. Absolutely, a lot longer than most people think.
and you have
Absolutely.
yeah, and you've got a lot of this exotic technology that has been worked on, privately. And I mean, this is part of this transition, which is, to me, it's gross, and how they've done it. Because, how do you then bring out, something that's really extreme if you haven't shown the public what's possible, right? So, maybe part of it is that. But I do, if I was to say one big thing here, the why now, I think there's a big power shift, a potential power shift. And I think you have legacy, um wealth and power that does not want to give up.
Mm.
And I think that they want to be part of the game. They want to be part of this dynamic, and which is sad, because you've also got this natural evolution that's taking place. I mean, this is where I come from, right? And I think you and others. There's this
Indeed.
natural evolution, we call it the tree of life, right? Like we go through this evolutionary process. This is the soul. This is the spirit, and this innate connection that some of us come in with, with our cosmic connections, and also being connected to the earth. And there is this sense of, with this technological uh, rush that is happening and going on, that there's this short circuiting of that, like technology can short circuit this evolution of the soul. And the why now, if you ask me, is because the time is up, and we're nearing that
Mm.
time that this planetary shift with the solar energies, is upon us. And I will say, Graham Hancock has a great series, and I don't know him personally, but I'm not plugging him. But he's got a great series on Netflix, about the cataclysms and this rebirth of time. And I think he's got that story, especially this last series, really on target. That parlays with a lot of my contact experience and a lot of what I came in knowing, about this shift and in this time that we're in. And to confuse the public as well, to acclimate the public maybe to a new story that they want.
Mm.
I think that's part of what's going on. And I think that they're hoping you don't remember who you are. And I think they're hoping you don't empower fully who you are. That is my sense. So, now is time for everybody to get on the natural evolution, and to realize there are no shortcuts. I mean, eventually you're gonna have to come back and do it again without, a full memory in place.
Beautifully said, as always. Beautifully said. Some of the most powerful changes can come about with an impetus like this, even though those that may be behind it, if it is what you're alluding to, Susan, although they may not be conscious of what they're doing may just be that
Mhm.
impetus for the change that is needed.
Yeah, I
So,
believe so. Because
yeah,
how can you have that rise up of one side, right, if
right,
you don't have the other side pushing against you? And,
absolutely.
and eventually, I mean, one of the things I saw, I'm gonna say one last thing. One of the things I was shown, in my contact experiences when I was taken out, into the cosmos, was that there's this great convergence, that is taking place, and it's taking place, all the life force that is on this earth and all the life force that's in this universe is converging. And so, you've got both of those, and maybe, there's a bit more karma that is going to be played out with those controllers,
Mm,
but at
mhm.
some point, they will come into that alignment. But I think it's our job, for those of us on that natural alignment and that natural rising up, to truly rise up and to realize we're an active part in this process. And nobody's going to do it for us. This is what we're here to do. We're here to lead that way.
Absolutely. Beautifully said. We will leave it there. Susan Manewich, as always, a pleasure and honor. Keep fighting the good fight and loving it with all the love that you have to give to so many at the same time. And we will definitely pick this up very shortly because I know that this saga or this blessing or both will be going on for some time. So, once again, we thank you for joining us today. And as always, journeyers, I thank you for joining me for another episode of Higher Journeys. Take care.